enjoying our instant summer this spring. It's good to have you all here. Before I forget it, I want to remind you to silence your cell phone and turn on your tea coil. I know how hard that is to remember because I have a hard time remembering to remind you. So we'll do that this morning first. I'm Joanne Bundy, and the Planning Committee and I are delighted to have you here to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the bucket courses. Thank you all for supporting this group for 5 years, and we hope we have at least another 5 years in the future. Thank you for coming. We want to thank Mayflower for their special treats that they had this morning, and also Cynthia Sherman for the lovely floral arrangement that she provided from Flowers by Design. You will find that you have a half sheet of paper on your table, and that's the evaluation sheet. This is not a requirement, but if you would like to, you are invited to express your comments about this course, anything about the bucket course. Yeah, be kind to JR. Anything about the bucket courses in general, and suggestions. Our planning committee takes this information very seriously. So if you see something we don't see, we're happy to hear about that. Let me see. Oh, yes. If JR happens to run over a little bit this morning, I mean, there's the slightest possibility that he may do that. If you need to leave at 11:30, please feel free to get up and leave. Yeah, don't want the room to clear or anything. And if you can stay, please do so. No extra charge. One more thing this morning. JR has offered to do another class next week just to have discussion, questions and answer, comments, and that sort of thing. Because he has so much to do for us today, he may not get a chance to do your questions. And so if you would like to do that, we can have another course next week. May I have a show of hands as to how many would be able to come next week to do that?
Everybody.
Okay, I guess we'll have a full room again. All right, thank you very much. And now we'll get right into this class. Dr. J.R. Paulson, Emotional Well-Being from Depression to Happiness. And I think we're rounding the curve to happiness today.
How's the sound test in the back? Everybody? Great. Well, let's get rolling. As I said, I wanted to not have a lot of time for questions today. I got a lot of things that I have to cover, but next week we won't videotape it, we won't have a lecture, we'll just sit around and just debrief about some of your thoughts or feelings of this, because I think that will be what will be really fun. So today we're going to talk about neuroplasticity, values, mindfulness, compassion, spirituality, and putting it all together. That's quite a bit to get in one session here. We'll talk about cars first. I'd like to use the car analogy. Remember we talked about that, I said that my motto, you listen to yourself, and if you're depressed, angry, sad down here, there's a reason. The auto mechanic model says if your car doesn't start in the morning, or doesn't start very well, it's running poorly, it's not getting good mileage, you're hearing a bad sound, you really ought to get it checked out, right? It should be telling you something. So in the last session and the sessions before, I said, what are some emotional gauges you can use to see what's going on? We talked about the car having one gauge. But there are gauges in the car, personal settings. So last night I was up at about 11 o'clock. I made my own dashboard for you just to remember. So, emotional well-being, self-gauge set. Stress, your tachometer, it's all wrong. But there's a point where you redline, you go too fast on your engine, you're going to burn it out. So that's, you have a stress meter. You have a little gauge on here that says that you're proactive or reactive. You got a gauge down here, your limbic system we talked about. What's your limbic emotional temperature? Are you calm or are you hot? What's your general energy level? Is your gas, you feel you're running on empty, full, or are you running on fumes? Are you, this little gauge, are you in the future, the present, or the past? And are you in your circle of control, or no, you're out in your circle of concern? And lastly, what filter set do you have on? Do you have your rosy glasses on, your dark, your blue, your clear, or your neutral? So if you kind of look at that gauge set, when things are going bad, or you're feeling bad, or somebody's just going bad, this gives you a quick summary. So Pearl 10, we're going to have 20, by the way, not 200, but we're going to get the total of 20 pearls. 10, the brain can and change, and therefore you. So, and therefore, so can you. Great book, some of you have read. I'm going to also, by next time, have a nice bibliography and a list of all the pearls. Great book. Norman Deutsch, The Brain That Changes Itself. All different things in people who've had strokes, or born with deformities, all of these things, and how we know now that the medical model that, oh, that's it, your brain's set, neurons aren't going to regrow, they're not going to rewire, is actually myth. Sigmund Freud said it over 60 years before Hebel stated his law. Try to remember this: neurons that fire together, wire together. It's catchy, but it's very true. Neuroplasticity is the term that best encompasses these recent discoveries in brain science. Functional MRIs, PET scans, and other imaging allow scientists to see the functioning brain in real time, as well as look for structure changes. So you can see how it's really, what's going on in there, but you can also look for anatomical changes. Way back in the early 30s, this Spanish neuroscientist said, every man can, if he so desires, become the sculptor of his own brain. Died in 34. Very prophetic. This is what a happy brain looks like. That's what a sad brain looks like. With functional MRI. And there is a difference. Alcohol breaks brain connections needed to process social cues. We can use this a lot in addiction medicine. Here's placebo, frontal connectivity to the amygdala. That's what processes emotions, social skills, and interactions. Person on placebo, this is lit up, but on alcohol, blue it's not working. So we can see now where alcohol, what it does to the brain as far as changing the connections and the functionality of it. What are the effects of drugs and alcohol on the developing brain? Very important. What about kids using marijuana? Big deal now. Problems before and after marijuana use. The blue is before and the red is after. So grades, see what happens to them, poor grades, conflict with parents, depression, which we're talking about, suicide attempts. So there's real behavioral data on that. The drug abuser's brain. Here's a normal brain, activity all around. This is 1 week, and this is 3 months. See the difference? A metabolism, it may contribute to the loss of control seen in addiction. So there are very classic brain changes that go on. What about using ecstasy and serotonin? We talked about the neurotransmitter, very important. Okay, here's a normal brain scan for serotonin. 2 weeks after you use ecstasy, look what happens to the serotonin. And 7 years after ecstasy, it doesn't come back all the way. 2 doses each day for just 4 days changes this. So this is not a permanent user. Which brain do you want? This is a good poster I think you should have in our junior high, high schools, whatever. Healthy, drug-free brains, age 16. This is what they look like on color scans. This is 3 years of meth. Alcohol, age 21. Marijuana, age 16. Years of smoking. Inhalants, years of cocaine, age 22. These are the brains. Look at the functioning there. Swiss cheesy. Some of those are not going to come back. What do drugs do to the physical and mental continuum? We know that a lot of people, why do they use drugs? Because they get high. You take a certain drug, you go up here on the emotional continuum, right? You feel good. You snort cocaine, heroin, Percocet, you're up here. But then what happens later? It wears off, and where do you go? You go down, don't you? So you use it more. You go up, and you go down. So pretty soon it takes more to get up to the same level. And the whole spectrum then over chronic drugs slides down. So now you get to the point here where you go down so low each time, you have to take it just to get to emotional neutral. Not to get high anymore, just to get to neutral. And you see that that's a dead-end path because that shifts this way emotionally, and what does it do physically? Shifts you this way also. So eventually, people are down here on both ends. And people who, in clinics who fail to treat the depression part of drug addiction is related to everything we're talking about today. It's past Mother's Day, but I found this very interesting, and I don't know what to do with it. Mayo Clinic. The latest way experts are using to determine if their patients' brains are depressed is have them looking at pictures of their moms. Depressed women apparently show unique brain activity when looking at their mother's photographs. There's a depressed brain, not depressed. Pretty obvious. So what they did, they took functional MRIs of 28 young women. Half of them suffered depression. Women were asked to look at pictures of friends, strangers, and their mothers. When they viewed the friend and strangers pics, the women's brains remained pretty much the same. But when they looked at their moms, the depressed woman's brain showed significantly greater activity in the region called the anterior paracingulate gyrus, which you don't need to know, which scientists think is responsible for regulating social emotions. The differences were large enough that scientists were able to use the brain scans alone to tell 90% accuracy which of the women were depressed. Just look at your mom. So something's going on in the subconscious that we're not aware of. Active psychotherapy. It can be clearly shown that certain psychotherapy can actually change the structure and the wiring and hence the biochemical functioning of childhood emotional traumas that may have been repressed or unknown for decades. So we think some of these bad things, saying all, but some can actually be changed to psychotherapy. In other words, talk therapy can actually change the structure of the brain. The standard dogma has been that the brain structure is pretty well fixed and the chemical messengers and neurotransmitters cause the behavior, our emotions, and how we feel. We now know beyond a doubt that how and what we think can and does not only influence our neurotransmitters, but can structurally change our brains. Yes, in any age. Henry David Thoreau. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by conscious endeavor. Little did Thoreau know. Another wonderful book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, by Daniel Amen, one of the classics. Breakthrough programs for anxiety, depression, obsessiveness, anger, and impulsivity. Pearl 11, develop and write down your set of values, which you did for your homework assignment. And in the next class, I'm going to talk about what I learned from that. But this group is pretty unique. You guys got some pretty cool values. I'm preaching to the choir here. What I want to be like if I got high school students, college students, middle-aged people, your kids, your grandkids, and have them do this. In my experience, most depressed, sad, or anxious people, I find either one, don't have a clear set of values. So what are your values? Or two, they don't live their life in accordance with them. Two different things. So values are anything with intrinsic worth, utility, or importance to you. It's what you prize and esteem. Why are they important? Values provide emotional boundaries and help you avoid fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Without boundaries, a person can feel completely vulnerable. Robert S. Eliot. Helps you make decisions. Ben Franklin had trouble when he was about 32. He was going through a midlife crisis and he didn't know where he was going, so he said, I need to write down my values. So he wrote down about 12 or 14 of his values to try to organize his life and get a handle of direction. And these are the first 5 that Ben wrote down. Tests to help you clarify your values. I use some of these on patients. The adjective test. That's where I have the person write down 10 adjectives that you would use to describe yourself. Good looking, smart, intelligent, all these things that you would use. Then you ask a friend to write down 10 things about you. And the third one, ideally you ask an enemy or someone that you hate to write 10 things about you. But they won't do it because they'll lie or they won't do it. But you can imagine what would other people say about you. And then you put those 3 lists together and take a look at it. The accomplishment test. Write down 5 things that you've accomplished in your life that you look at as your accomplishments. Secondly, then put them in order. What have you accomplished in your life that you think is the best? What's the obituary test? I often have patients write your obituary. That's your homework assignment. Come in here. That's pretty scary. What do you want to be remembered as? What was the significance of your life? And to get that, you have to search defining values. The checkbook test. Bring in your checkbook. Get a month of the checkbook and put it in categories of fun, recreation, charity, food, basic supplies, and see where is your money going. The willing to die for test. What things would you be willing to die for? Military service, your son, your daughter, your spouse, other people. Would you die for an idea? What if a politician told you to do this, or a political state told you to do this? At what point would your values and what your state or your nation tell you to do, would you go, no, I'm not going to do that? Who am I now? Who do I wish to become? Only by clarifying your values can you consciously begin to make rational commitments to change. As you identify and correct internal disharmonies, you also lower your internal stress. People don't know they have this going on. If they don't have sets of values, they just feel not right. One must have values before one can have goals. And it's goals that organize and help give meaning and direction to our life. I have this goal. I want to do this. I want to read this book. I want to walk this 5K. I want to do this. I want to do that. And those are based on values. Let's see. Why is not advancing?
Something came down.
Something came out.
Fell down.
Yeah. In the front there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Cool, okay. Thanks. No wind blows in favor of the ship without directions. Without direction. I like that. I find patients of all ages, but more often in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, that are unhappy because of a lack of clear values. This is what I believe the primary cause of the midlife crisis. My life is half over. What have I accomplished? Where am I going? This produces much pain and suffering, as a person without values is like a boat adrift on the open sea with no sense of direction. A clear set of values can provide a rudder for our lives. Some of you that I've counseled talk about, I use the boat analogy, that most people are just riding down the river of life, and I can expand on this next time more, but just are floating down the river of life, and wherever the water takes them, if it takes them into a eddy, or takes them into a rapids, or crashes them into the bank, they just go wherever it's going. They don't realize they have a rudder that they can control somewhat where they're going. And it's like when they realize they have that internal rudder, all of a sudden, all the things they thought they had no control over, many of them they do. And the rudder can give them direction. The reactive person is just carried by the current, the Covey term, wherever it goes. The proactive person grabs a hold of the rudder, steers the boat, and less metaphorically, is actual life. Values are like a compass that give us direction and determines where we want our life to go. In our car analogy, goals are the destinations in our roads of life. And a compass is to help us keep going in the right direction. So on my car, you got all your instruments, just put a compass on the top. So you're always going where you want to go. And by the way, for my Confucius class, who invented the compass? Chinese?
Yeah.
Remember that? Who invented the rudder?
Yeah.
Chinese. Rudder goes up and down. Who invented the sails that turn and can capture the wind in different directions? Chinese. And by the way, remember from my Confucius class, this was a Chinese boat. Here's our good old American Christopher Columbus-sized boats. Chinese have a little, Confucians have a little jump on us here. I'll come back to this boat analogy later, probably in the next class, not today. I also have a great analogy. I think life is a big bridge game. And I want to get into that sometime for you bridge players. I just really think bridge and life are the same. Coaches always have analogies and things as lessons from sports. I think bridge has got things to do over. Creating a set of values is not a simple matter. It requires significant time, commitment, and effort, as well as revisions, especially as we grow older and hopefully wiser. You folks, I'm really impressed by your values. These didn't just come up. These were different when you were 21 or 22, I bet. Thinking, I want to get tenure, I want to have more kids, we need more financial stuff. Now, different places in your life, the values can change. That's fine. However, it is sometimes easier just to adopt a set of values from someone else or from some organization, religion, or movement. Some people don't want to, this is hard work to come up with a set of values. It's much easier just to hop onto some movement, some group, a political party, a national movement, a religion, where you're just going to take hook, line, and sinker. Because, oh, it's got the values for you. What should I do? What determine? I'm not saying that's bad, but it can be. Another book I mentioned before, Eric Hoffer, The True Believer, classic, about why do people join these movements? What makes people be a Nazi? What makes people be a fanatical Christian or a fanatical Islam? Do we follow our professed values? Now, I have depressed patients write down their values as part of their therapy session. Okay, they come back, they do that. Then I have them keep a time log for several days, noting how much time they spent in the areas of work, time with children, watching TV, exercising, Sudoku, time with spouse, time on the computer, etc. Depressed patients, in my experience, almost without exception, have a huge mismatch. Their actions and lives don't reflect their stated values, and over time, this disharmony manifests itself as stress, denial, and they don't know, but it's unconscious unhappiness. They write down family, but on the whole week, they spend this much time with the family. They say spouse, they spend this much time with spouse. Good health, they spend this much time exercising. So I just sit back and go like, these two things don't jive. So either change your values, because they're not right. Remember the different expectations performance, or change your values, or start doing this stuff. Oh yeah, I love my kids. Well, how much time you spend seeing a softball game and all these things, and watching them perform, or read to them, or all this. Good time management is value-based. People who are frustrated and not happy with what they do or accomplish in their day or lives are not living or spending enough time in Covey's Quadrant 2. We have a tool to help us with this. Pearl 12, put first things first. Many people complain of not having enough time, not getting things done, or a remark, how does she accomplish all that? We all have the same number of hours in a day, so why do some people get so little done, and many other people accomplish so much? Most people, in my opinion, are extremely poor in time management. Good. Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least. That's a quote to take to the bank. Covey's 4 quadrants. Stephen Covey has shown us the technique as to how to make our life richer, more efficient, more satisfying, therefore happier. This tool is the 4 quadrants. By placing events of everyday life into one of the 4 quadrants, one can see if our life is in fact reflecting our values. So what you do is you just get a piece of paper and you have 4 quadrants. This is the urgent stuff. This is the non-urgent stuff. This is the important stuff. This is the non-important stuff. And then you take everything you do and put them in one of those quadrants. Examples. This is urgent. It's important. You got to do it. It's crisis, pressing problem. Somebody calls them at the office. They need a prescription. Somebody got to go home. You just do it. You got to do it. This is kind of a no-brainer. 2, urgent, but not important. Some interruptions, some Cell phone calls, some texts, some mail, tons of stuff. I see people spend all this time and then they're getting all this stuff. And they think it's not important, but it's urgent because it pops up on your screen, you know? It's urgent. Do me now. Do this. People text, do this now. And people spend time with that. Interruptions, some meetings are useless. Pressing matters, popular activities. Okay, then there's 4. These aren't urgent and they're not important. Trivia, busy work, some mail. You think of the junk mail you get in your mailbox? What do? You don't even want to spend any time with it. Well, I'm telling you, there's junk stuff coming on your computer, there's junk time you're spending, some phone calls, time wasters. Some people, okay, you're doing lots of crossword puzzles and you're doing that and you're Sudoku and you're spending 3 hours on this or half an hour a day. Okay, it's not urgent, it's not important, and it's pleasant. Okay, cool. But, what about 2? It's important but not urgent. Prevention, relationship building, personal care activities, planning, recreation, recognizing new opportunities. I'll put in here meditation and exercise. Exercise, it's not urgent, but it's important. So people say same number of hours in the day, but if you're filling stuff up with here, you got a problem. So people that spend too much time here, stress, they get burned out. They're always in crisis management. People who down in quadrant 3, they got short-term focus. They just worry about, what am I going to get today? I got to get this stuff done. I got this pile of stuff. And it's really not that important, but they feel that it is. They see goals and plans as worthless because they can't look down the line. They feel victimized, out of control. They may have shallow or broken relationships. People who spend a lot of time in 3 and 4, they're just irresponsible. Let's call a spade a spade. Fired from jobs. Dependent on others for or institutions for the basics. They don't do anything that's important. They need to take care of me. Obviously, we want more in quadrant 2. This gives you vision, perspective, balance, discipline, control, and few crises. So if you put more into 2, you got a lot less in the other. Well, where do you get that time in the day? Gee, I know which quadrant I were going to carve it out of, right? Pearl 13, be mindful. To fully utilize the proactive paradigm, one must be mindful. We must understand the power of this activity and realize that it is really the core principle for change and happiness. It's a skill that can be learned, honed, and practiced. It's the only way that we can learn to control our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. Time magazine recently, it's becoming in vogue, mindfulness. Mindlessness. That's where most of us are. That's the default setting. Do you really control your mind, or does it control you? How often is your mind completely attentive to the present? Doesn't it naturally gravitate to one of 2 places, the past or the future? Do you often have thoughts and their accompanying feelings that are unpleasant, crash in on your mind like uninvited guests? Can you completely turn off your mind and let it be still? If so, for how long? Rather than being in control of our minds seem to control us, driving us in the directions it sees fit. This mindless state causes us more suffering than we probably realize. It seems that much of our present culture is aimed at not allowing our minds to be still, hence the striving to find continued stimulation. TV, iPhones, computer use, amusements, drugs, and alcohol. And you see the generation, something's got to be stimulating all the time. Just peace, quiet, it's like, ooh, I can't handle that. What are we afraid we'll find? It seems that we are afraid to be alone, really alone with ourselves or our ego in the raw, so to speak. It seems like many people in their lives, or live their lives in this autopilot or cruise control type of existence. So what? Well, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. See an article in Science, November 12th, 2010. Killingsworth and Gilbert at Harvard. They had this cool iPhone app. They contacted 2,225 volunteers, ages 18 to 85, at random intervals. And said, hey, how happy are you? And they gave them the scale to rate. Oh, by the way, what were you doing when we did this? And also, What are you thinking? So, how do you feel? What are you doing? How are you thinking? Pretty sneaky, use of the cell phone apps. They found the subjects' minds were wandering almost 47% of the time. Most happy? No, making love, exercising, or engaging in conversation. Least happy? Resting, working, or on the computer. Mind wandering is an excellent predictor of people's happiness. In fact, how often our minds leave the present and where they tend to go is a better predictor of our happiness than the activities in which they're engaged. Furthermore, time lag analysis of the subject's responses suggested that their mind wandering was the cause, not a result of their unhappiness. Whoa, that's putting the cart before the horse. Pretty clever data and experiment. Mindfulness. What is mindfulness then? It's moment-to-moment awareness. It's a process of attentively observing your own experiences as they unfold. It doesn't judge them, it doesn't evaluate them, or compare what you're thinking or feeling. It occurs in real time, like watching a movie of yourself as you think or act. It is not about removing thoughts. People think, oh, you just clear everything out of your brain. It can only be done, as far as we know, by the human beings, and this ability is due to our capacity of self-awareness. But we don't know for sure with other animals. The first written documentation of this process was from the Buddha about 2,500 years ago. He's the one that first started to teach about the importance of mindfulness. The Buddha taught that mindfulness, or sati, was a heightened awareness that promoted the end of suffering and fostered happiness and well-being for all. It's one component of the Eightfold Path. It's the only way that one can see for oneself the true nature of the world or reality. This is about happiness. It gives you insight into the real world. And we can talk about that more next week if you want. Has as its primary goal increased awareness, not just checking out. And as you can see, it's part of the Eightfold Path. Looks a lot like Confucius. Right speech, right action, right livelihood, right mindfulness. Other religions have used mindfulness too. In Hinduism, mindfulness is said to peel away the many layers of illusion that veil our clear perception of the ultimate reality. Confucianism, as we have seen, mindfulness is part of the moral self-cultivation, the regimen that enables individuals to realize their full potential. In Christianity, it's often understood to bring one closer to God and a life of greater holiness. Benefits of mindfulness. Finding a clearer perception of oneself in the world. See how we are reacting to the world so that we can be more proactive. Help us deal with difficult emotional states such as anger, greed, guilt, and fear. Provide us with the resources to act on these states in ways that are beneficial rather than damaging. Allows us to recognize patterns of thinking that are detrimental to the well-being of ourselves and others. Many of you in your values were very concerned about others and the rest of the world, not just about yourself. Mindfulness is a valuable tool in helping us cope with our bodies. An American Heart Association study showed that patients who practice mindfulness regularly reduced by half their risk of heart attacks, strokes, and death from all causes, compared to patients who were only given education about healthy living and diet. 50%. You don't have any drugs your cardiologist is going to give you that's going to cut down your chance of dying or have a stroke or heart attack by 50%. Mindfulness does. Many, many good studies that show that. Relapse and depression. Study in Toronto with 160 patients with major depressive disorder were treated to remission with medications. Remember, we're using a holistic approach. Medicines have a role. I'm just saying there's lots of other things. So these folks got better with medication. One group was then continued with a placebo, so they didn't know if they were getting the drug or not. And the other group practiced mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy. After a year and a half, this is a good study, not just a couple weeks, 70% of the placebo group relapsed back into depression, whereas only 30% of those who practiced mindfulness did. So you got depression, you get better, and you want to stay better. Pearl 14, practice meditation. And I think, is this a good time or you want me to just do a little bit more? Okay, so let's just do it. 14, practice meditation. Meditation is the exercise for the mind. Just like going to the gym, working out is for your body, moving you up the physical, I posit that meditation is the exercise for the mind. Refers to certain exercises that can be used to enlarge and refine mindfulness. Provides us with specific ways to train our awareness, like an exercise prescription for the body. I liken it to training our mind like training a dog on a leash. So you got your mind, and it's going here, and it's going there, and think of a little puppy dog you got that you're walking, and you got it on a leash. Okay, the dog sees something over there, a bird or a cat, and tears off that one. And you got the leash, bring it. Dog sees some other dog do or something over there, wants to go over there and check it out. Keep pulling him. He's pulling it heavy. Right? He's dragging you forward. Slow down. He's way behind you, dragging him. Doesn't that feel like that's what your mind is sometimes? It's ahead. In the future, it's behind. It's going here, it's going there. And so what analogy that meditation is just bringing the mind. You don't jerk it, choke the dog. You just gently realize that what eventually happens to the dog that's well trained. It can walk next to you without a leash. Your mind can be trained like that also. You train the dog in a couple days? Nope. You train your mind in a couple days? Nope. It's not just thinking or concentrating on something or an idea, it's meditating on a problem. What about global warming or something? It's not exotic. It's not intended in this use that I'm talking about to attain transcendence, have out-of-body experiences, or being one with God in the universe, although those things could happen too. And it's not just an escape from reality. I got an unhappy existence, I'm just going to go meditate, and I want to feel good for a little bit. It's not really self-centered, as you'll see. And finally, it's not easy or quickly attainable. Is physical fitness easy and quickly attainable? No. It ain't easy. You got to put in the time. You got to do the stuff. If you want to move up on here, and I'm saying it's the same way with that. Buddhism teaches that the true nature of the world and all existence are based on three principles. The mindfulness tradition reveals the intricate ways we are intertwined with the world and interdependent with the lives of others. And again, this is a deep concept, but it's very important that we're all related in different ways together. Secondly, the mindfulness tradition reveals the transience of all things in the world. All things come, all things change, all things go. So if we're trying to hang on to stuff, whether it's family, whether it's spouse, whether it's our health, whether it's our good looks, whether it's the tree in the backyard, Buddhism says, think about it, it's not, everything's transient. It's going to be gone at some time. And a mindfulness tradition reveals dukkha, or suffering, as one of the three realities of the world. Some of you on your questionnaire said, I hope we don't have this, we don't have this, I wish for this, wish this. Buddhism says, there's suffering. The world is suffering. That is the nature of human reality. It is going to happen. Now, stopping war, pestilence, and other things, we can talk about that, but certain things are going to happen, regardless. Meditation can cultivate the twin virtues of compassion and wisdom, which I think is really, really important. The mind is indeed restless, Arjuna. It is indeed hard to train, but by constant practice, the mind in truth can be trained. When the mind is not in harmony, this divine communion is hard to retain. But the man whose mind is in harmony retains it, if he knows and if he strives. Lord Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there's any excellence, and if there's anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. So put your mind on good things, good thoughts. A lot of the pain that we are dealing with are really only thoughts. The mind is a double-edged sword. While we may not be able to control particular thoughts, we can influence the conditioned mind that gives rise to these thoughts. If we can make small, incremental changes in what we do with these thoughts, we can change the way the brain functions and over time change its structure. And I think we'll stop there, and then right after break, I'm going to talk about how you do that. I mean, it sounds good, but we need some more practical advice.
Thank you for answering the bell. Appreciate that. This being our 5th anniversary of the bucket courses, we have 3 bucketeers who have been enrolled in every single bucket course for the past 5 years. And we would like to honor them this morning. First of all, they will receive a certificate that is hand-produced by our artist-in-residence, Misha Worley. And then they will have the next 5 years tuition-free. And when I read your name, I would like you, the 3 of you, to come up, and Misha will give you the certificate. And if you would stay after just for a moment this morning, we would also like to take your picture. So please come up to the front. Art Hyman. Merle Zirkle. And Joanne Britton.
These distinguished personages need a little extra attention and honor. I mean, they signed up for every class for 5 years. 5 years? Some people seem to think that they have learned all they should know. And others know without a doubt that this just isn't so. We see that you will never stop your quest for knowledge new, with hopes of seeing your own world from yet another view. You signed up for all offerings 5 full years in a row. So here's our special gift to you. We're pleased to let you know we offer you another 5 with no cost whatsoever, because we know you want your mind to be alert forever.
Thank you, the 3 of you, and all of you for your wonderful support. Just think that when we started this, we were all 5 years younger. I want to re-emphasize, thank you very much. I want to re-emphasize what JR said about next week not having a camera. We don't want your comments and questions to be on the World Wide Web, and I'm sure you don't either. So it will just be in our intimate little group here of 90 people. And so here is JR again with emotional well-being.
You thought that was a good idea, right? Pull down the lights. Okay, so basically there's 2 types of thought categories: unwholesome thoughts and wholesome thoughts. Unwholesome thoughts are the ones that are not conducive to freedom and happiness, are often associated with selfish desire and predicated on our voracious appetite for pleasure. May be associated with hatred, anger, resentment, envy, and jealousy. Can also be those of insecurity, inadequacy, failure, or our own worthlessness. Unwholesome thoughts are sometimes deluded thoughts that are at odds with reality and our failure to see ourselves in the world as they really are. Mindfulness gives us the tools to recognize and then attend to these unwholesome thoughts. And I call this the 5 R's. And again, I could go into the more detail at a later time. But basically, you have these unwholesome thoughts, you can relinquish them. You can replace them with a wholesome thought. You can reflect on the results, the long-term consequences. If I do this, if I think this, what's going to be the long-term effect of this? Redirect to something more beneficial. Or you can reconstruct, go back and analyze how that thought came to be. What beliefs and assumptions is it based on? Why do I feel this negative toward this person? And go backwards. Because this and this, or somebody told me this or this, and analyze it that way. What's it based on? And is it just a reaction to something that went on before? So there are lots of, by practicing techniques, it's easy to say, well, just don't think about that. You need something to be able to do, and these are just a brief introduction of things to do. In the Covey mode, mindfulness widens the stimulus-response gap. Remember, you got stimulus-response, and I told you in people, that widens that gap. So someone says a nasty comment to us, we don't just automatically react, we think that, we stand back a little bit. Why are they saying that? What should I say? Can I make a smart-ass remark? It might put them down, but in the long run, is that going to be the thing I really want to do? If you have that gap in time to do that processing, your response may be very different. As we do this over and over again, it takes practice, and different neurons fire, and different chemical cascades ensue. And remember, neurons that fire together, wire together. So our brain keeps going into this bad circuit, thinking about these bad things about our kids, or about this, or about that. We can start, no, not do that, let's send our brain the other way. And you keep doing that, and pretty soon it doesn't go that way as much. Remember the limbic system, that emotional deep part of our brain? How is it functioning in depressed people? When it's overactive, it sets the mind's filter on negative. You see the world and other people as negative. When they look at the past with their limbic system like that, they feel regret. When they look at the future, they feel anxiety and pessimism. And in the present moment, they're likely to find something unsatisfactory. So when your limbic system is set, that's why you got a limbic system meter on your car, you can't please these people. You know, no matter what it is, it's just ain't what happened. It's not you, it's their limbic system is screwed up. Now, two, Taoism. If you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, we already said this before, you're living in the future. If you are at peace, you're living in the present. Good words of wisdom. Daniel Ammon's book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, he describes depressed people as suffering from automatic negative thoughts. I like this acronym, ANTS. Love it. ANTS are gloom and complaining thoughts that just seem to keep marching in all by themselves, like ants will in your kitchen in a little while. Ants can cause people to be depressed and fatalistic. He recommends treatment is to kill ants when and wherever you find them. Note that mindfulness is needed to both identify and then deal with these unwholesome thoughts, which he's calling ants. Examples. Ant. You never listen to me. Species of ant. Always and never thinking. Kill the ant. I get frustrated when you don't listen to me. But I know you have listened to me and will again. The boss doesn't like me. Mind reading. I don't know that. Maybe she's just having a bad day. Bosses are people too. The whole class will laugh at me. Fortune telling. I don't know that. Maybe they'll really like my speech. I'm stupid. Labeling. Sometimes I do things that aren't too smart, but I'm really not a stupid person. It's your fault we have these marital problems. Blaming. I need to look at my part of the problem and look for ways I can make the situation better. So you find an ant, you'd have to come up with a different response, but you got to identify it in the first place. This is what I found, getting back into meditation. I'd done it before, I'd done transcendental meditation, but this course that I got for Christmas a year or so ago from my son, by Professor Busey, one of the great courses, is really a thing I really zoomed into for meditation skills and practice. So I can recommend it if you're really serious into getting in. And it isn't just about the technique, it puts it in the whole philosophy of this, everything we're talking about today. Pearl 16, remember we only got the 20 to get to. Be compassionate. Do things for others. Compassion is a mental attitude based on the wish for others to be free of their suffering and is associated with a sense of commitment, responsibility, and respect toward others. A lot of you on your values have compassion. I was really impressed. Not to be confused with empathy. What's the difference? Empathy is the ability to feel what others feel, but doesn't imply any action. So I can have empathy for that person that's fallen in the water and drowning. Oh, that's too bad, they're drowning. I feel so sorry for them. Somebody got hit by a car. Oh, isn't that too bad? And you drive on by. Not going to get help. You see, you can feel sympathy. Oh, I feel so bad for them. Well, compassion is action. You're going a step further, you're doing something. I feel so bad about those people that are starving or this or that. But, okay, you got empathy for them, but you see the difference? I often, as a prescription for a depressed patient, I'm not getting anywhere with them. They're still depressed. I often say, do some volunteer work for someone less fortunate than you. They're complaining and whining about how bad stuff is for them, and yes, it is bad and it is horrible, but there's a lot of people out there that's a lot worse. So I say, go volunteer, be a hospice volunteer, go be in the nursing home, go and do this. And if they do that, what happens? You feel better. Their depression is better. All the Prozac and Paxil, it helps, but does it do anything for this? No. So I'm telling you, this is one of the secrets to happiness. Chimpanzees even do this as an animal. They have two color tokens here. And this chimp can get either, let's say, a red or a green token. If he gets the red token, he just gets food. If he gets the green token, he gets food, and the other chimp gets food too. And what do the chimps usually choose? The one that they both get. Selfishness is not innate in the human population or in chimps. There's a plethora of hard scientific evidence to show the benefits of compassion. Neuroscientists have shown that helping others activates the same centers in the brain involved in dopamine pleasure responses to food and sex. In one study, these pleasure centers lit up when participants even thought about giving money to charity. They didn't do it, they just thought about it, and their brain lit up. Luke's found in a study of 3,000 volunteers that regular helpers are 10 times more likely to be in good mental health than those who don't volunteer. 10 times. People 55 and older who volunteer for 2 or more organizations have an impressive 44% lower likelihood of dying, even when controlling for physical health, exercising, marital status, and smoking. So yeah, I'm physically fit, I do this, I do that. Volunteer. You're going to cut your mortality rate by 44%. So this is not just touchy-feely stuff. This has got real-world implications. A landmark 2000 study of 30,000 Americans, big study, found that those who gave contributions of time or money were 42% more likely to be happy than those who didn't. David McClellan at Harvard showed a group of students a film of Mother Teresa working among Calcutta's sick and poor. The students reported that the film stimulated feelings of compassion. So it generated this feeling. Afterwards, he analyzed the students' saliva and found increased immunoglobulin A, an antibody that can help fight respiratory infections. So watching a movie of somebody being compassionate boosts up your immune system. Not doing it, just watching a movie of it. So compassion has powerful effects. Remember how the immune system is hooked to the limbic system, is hooked to the frontal cortex, it's all not just brain chemicals. University of Michigan study found that doing regular volunteer work, interacting with others in a warm and compassionate way, dramatically increases life expectancy and vitality as well. And again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, because I know in this group, many of you are 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 volunteer groups. That's why you're here, that's why most of you are happy. Ever positive. A 30-year study of Harvard graduates demonstrated that adopting an altruistic lifestyle is a critical component to good mental health. Luke's, in another study, found that 90% of those who volunteered regularly reported a kind of high associated with the activity, characterized by feeling of warmth, more energy, calmness, a kind of euphoria, and after the activity, a feeling of enhanced self-worth. Meta-meditation is one exercise that is particularly effective in awakening the natural compassion that's within us. So one of the things I do, and it's done a lot with meditation, is you meditate for yourself, for your family, for others, and ideally for your enemies, and then for all people. So an example of a meta-meditation is, may you be well and happy. Then you repeat it to yourself. May you have no fears or sorrows. Then you repeat it. May you be healthy and free from illness. Repeat it. May you live calmly and peacefully. And this is for other people. And by saying that and doing this over and over again, it changes things within you. I was a little skeptical at first, because usually it's a pox on your enemies, or I hope you hit my truck and stuff. That's at least my natural inclination sometimes. But the more you do this, you just think, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Behavioralist therapy. But I don't feel like doing any of the above. Okay, some of you would say, maybe I feel too depressed to smile, or act happy, or care about the suffering of others. I'm too depressed. How can I worry about all these other people in the world? So I'll do what Dr. David Ferguson, with his permission, told his office staff, smile, damn it. I remember that, Fergie. So he didn't care if they ever felt bad or had a bad day at home or whatever. You're going to be nice and smile and happy. Damn it. He just did it. And you should. He was really onto something. Doing the behavior eventually changes the mind, the brain, and eventually the feelings. Pencil and the mouth experiment. I love this. Subjects were grouped into 3 groups. And one of them, I guess I use a magic marker. You hold the pencil in your lips. Second group holds the pencil in their teeth. Okay? Third group just holds it in their hand. That's the 3 tables, 3 groups. Then they show you a cartoon. What do you think the result is? Will it be any difference? Huge difference. The people who held it in their teeth thought that the cartoon was really funny. And the other people didn't. Reason being, when you hold something in your lips, you activate muscles. I can give you the names of them. The pouting muscles. They're frowning. You activate pouting muscles. You have to hold it in your lips. When you hold it in your teeth, you have to. You can't fake it. You just have to use. You have to use the other muscles to do it. Well, just that fact of activating those muscles with a stupid pencil in your mouth makes something funnier. You see the word better. So our facial expressions and what we do, it does matter. So when you say smile, damn it, it really does make some changes. So, okay, that's nice, but and laughing causes an increase in killer T cells. We show people movies, there are killer T cells in cancer. It's important to have killer T cells to grow out. So I recommend large doses of funny in old movies and jokes to people who are depressed. That is therapy. See some old Bob Hope, Lucy, I love Lucy things. Makes you smile. Causes immune changes, causes biochemical changes, gets your neurotransmitters jacked up. Right? And it's just fun. Despite his repeated efforts to explain things to her, Satan could never dissuade his mother from offering cookies and milk to the Eucharist. Mom! No! Wouldn't that be frustrating if you're Satan? Here's your mom, but moms, they're compassionate people. Mom, Just feel sorry for all these sinners down there, and come on, let's get them some cookies and milk. Isn't that cool? So it's deep in our DNA. It really is. You just gotta find it, even in hell. Pearl 17. Continue to work and refine your spirituality. I will define spirituality as that which gives your life meaning and purpose. It's also defined by the answers to the questions. Where did I come from? How do I relate to the world around me? Why am I here? And where am I going? Religion, on the other hand, is an organized system of beliefs, ceremonies, and rules often used to worship a god or group of gods. So religion and spirituality are not the same. Religions are then subsets of spirituality. So you hear spirituality, and out of that, yes, the pie, there are different religions. And of course, the majority of the world's population is usually a member of one of the major religious groups. Now, being a member of it and practicing it are two different things. So people can say, oh yes, they're Christian and do this, but they don't live their day-to-day life in stuff. So it's different if you're kind of practicing religion or just say on a survey, I'm blah, blah, blah. Religion can provide an ethical framework and set of values that can govern one's behavior, and should, in my opinion, help reduce conflict and suffering in the world. Provide inspiration and strength during times of turmoil and disease, dis-ease, physical and mental. Can provide a rationale for our universal connectedness in humanity. Can help make one have a happier, healthier life. Religions can give support and comfort to those who have undergone loss or near the end of life. So religion's got some important things to offer. And as we know, they're varied. There are cultures and people. Regardless of one's religious views, we all have to ultimately confront basic existential questions. No other animal, except I think elephants, as far as we know that they will eventually die. See, that's the problem. My cat is not worried, my dog is not worried. They don't know what's coming. Humans, we all do know what's coming. And to repress these questions doesn't mean that they go away. Oh, nothing. They're still there in the subconscious. And they're gnawing or eating or whatever they're doing down there. And test issue. Bring them up and deal with them. Why did I say elephants? Because elephants are unique. When elephants are walking across the savannah and they find skulls of hippos and other animals, they just kind of keep going on. When they find skulls of their own species, they don't just stop and smell. They stop and spend a long time. They know this was once a live elephant. I mean, there's no other way you can interpret that. And they've taken other skulls and put out there, you know, the ones that look like elephants or other species to see what they do. That they just go right on by. They recognize that. Wow. So they have to have some. And we also heard about elephants going to, when they know they're going to die, they go to a certain place. But I thought this is powerful. So what are dolphins, whales, other things? We don't have a clue. The existential question of what happens to us after death has occupied human thought for thousands of years. Concepts of heaven, nirvana, happy hunting grounds, etc. have always played against the realms of damnation, torture, and hell as a reward and punishment system to hold cultural and societal groups together. And it's only because humans can imagine such places that physical policing policies become less necessary for group control. I don't have to have a policeman there to tell you what to do. If I can instill a moral belief that don't do that or something bad going to happen to you, that's pretty good control. The idea of a soul guarantees that our own ego and personality will somehow survive death. What are the beliefs of a suicide bomber or a kamikaze pilot? Very important, because what they believe leads them to their actions. I remember interested in college when I read Sartre. And I always thought hell was a place, that you go to if you're bad after. And then after seeing the play, I went, oh, Joseph and Estelle and Inez, they're people. And so after you see the play, you go, people are hell. And you believe it after you read the book or see that play. You don't have to wait for the afterlife. People are hell to each other, and being with people can be hell. Suffering is another basic fact of human existence, and an inescapable reality. So people are religions that they're just going to say, oh, that isn't going to happen or whatever. At least according to some mindfulness and Buddhist traditions say, no, not really. But some sort of belief system is needed if one is to cope with suffering and loss. Those who don't deal with this well or repress it tend to sadness and depression. So on your questionnaires, when you were down here emotionally, a lot of you, it was a loss. It was a loss of a spouse. It was a loss of a child. It was a loss of a marriage. That's three. It was the loss of a person or an institution at your lowest points down here. Isn't that interesting? So dealing with that in our society, particularly Western, does not do well with that. We are not good grievers, and that should be another bucket course. Viktor Frankl, 1947. Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. September 1942, Viktor Frankl, prominent Jewish psychiatrist and neurologist in Vienna, was arrested and transported to a Nazi concentration camp with his wife and parents. 3 years later, when his camp was liberated, most of his family, including his pregnant wife, had perished. But he, prisoner number 119104, had lived. In his best-selling 1946 book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl concluded that the difference between those who had lived and those who had died came down to one thing: meaning. As he saw in the camps, those who found meaning, even in the most horrendous circumstances, were far more resilient to suffering than those who did not. Quote, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, Frankl wrote in the book. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And picture the well-worn book. It's excellent if you want to get further into Frankl. Unfortunately, we have to look at the other side of the coin. Religions have sometimes been usurped for political, financial, and military gain. Have had, if not had their basic tenets twisted, changed, and modified to justify those in power or those seeking power. They often persecute other religions as scapegoats for power and political ends. We see this all the time now. In my reading of history, it's been going on for thousands of years. Totalitarian regimes have always ultimately failed to suppress or eliminate religion because of the basic need and desire of all human beings for spirituality. Communism in Russia and now in China, trying to make it an atheistic, non-religion, they're not doing too well. Well, they just gave me a nice article about what's going on in China now. You can't take spirituality out of people, no matter what you try to substitute it with. So we're all familiar with the bad things that have gone on in religion. But with the secular review, many say, forget all the religions. Unfortunately, many people have been traumatized by some negative religious event or events in their life, usually in childhood. And this has limbically colored their hippocampus where your memories are. They can only see the negative aspects, or the old lady in the picture. So you mention religion or this, pretend, they got their filters already flipped on. In addition, they also jettison anything of a spiritual nature, often to their emotional detriment and well-being, since we all have to eventually deal with these existential issues. So I see a lot of people, particularly young people, that they don't have any belief, they don't have any system. They still got these issues to deal with, in my opinion. Can we learn things from religion? Yes. Mother Teresa, life not lived for others is not a life. I love this quote from her. People are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyways. If you are kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyways. If you find happiness, people may be jealous. Be happy anyways. The good you do today may be forgotten tomorrow. Do good. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. But give your best anyways. For you see, in the end, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them anyways. Nice quote. One of my other heroes, the Dalai Lama, would recommend this book. He is just awesome. Whether one believes in religion or not, he says, and whether one believes in rebirth or not, there isn't anyone who doesn't appreciate kindness and compassion. The Dalai Lama, however, feels that there is a deeper, more basic spirituality. This is the basic human qualities of goodness, kindness, compassion, and caring. Whether we are believers or non-believers, this kind of spirituality is essential. He feels that no matter how wonderful a religion may be, it will be accepted only by a limited number of people. A humanism that values and has compassion for all human beings on the planet, therefore, supersedes any one religion or set of beliefs. He goes on to say, it's all right to remain without any religion, but be a good human being anyways. A sensible human being with a sense of responsibility and commitment for a better world. So he doesn't have, you have to be a Buddhist, or you have to be this. You can be spiritual, and it's not a problem. Thus, whether one leads a spiritual life depends on whether one has been successful in bringing about that disciplined, tame state of mind and translating that state of mind into one's daily actions. So doing something. Confucius could not have said it any different or better. It is only by putting our values, thoughts, and feelings into action that we can make the world a better and happier place. Dalai Lama, quote, beyond religion. All the world's major religions, with their emphasis on love, compassion, patience, tolerance, and forgiveness, can do to promote inner values. But the reality of the world today, he's a realist, is that grounding ethics in religion is no longer adequate. Because my religion's right, your religion's wrong. Let's fight it out. So who's the higher authority you're going to go to? God's on my side? No, God's on my side. Kill you guys. It says it doesn't work. This is why I'm increasingly convinced that the time has come to find a way of thinking about spirituality and ethics beyond religion altogether. So he's seeing this humanism as being above the individual, for the religion, but saying we got to look above that politically. We can never obtain peace in the outer world until we make peace within ourselves. Change only takes place through action, not through meditation and prayer alone. So sitting around in monasteries and praying, you realize that doesn't cut it. Dalai Lama believes strongly that all the major religions can and should coexist in peace. I believe that each individual should embark upon a spiritual path that is best suited to his or her mental disposition, natural inclination, temperament, belief, family, and cultural background. I love that quote. Different religions can be for different people. I like to use this analogy. Can't we all sit down at the same table and eat different cuisines? Why does somebody who comes from a Mexican heritage, we gotta all have Mexican food. Everybody's gotta like Mexican food. People from Chinese, we gotta have Chinese food. Chinese food is the right. It'd be stupid to go in a restaurant, you order what you like, we all have individual needs and dispositions. Let us eat cuisines. My own bias is, so I'm a Unitarian, I like to sample all the cuisines. Because I think they all got good stuff in them. So somebody trying to say, well, my cuisine is better than yours, well, let's fight it, or have a food fight. Among religions seems to me kind of like, no, every religion, it's great. And secondly, when your kids are come up, you bring them up and say, nope, only eat this kind of food, only eat this American beef and potatoes, or only eat this. Tell your kid, this is the way we eat. Okay, what happens when your kids leave the home? They're exposed to other foods, right? Well, they're going to try other stuff. So starting to brainwash them or condition them too much, let them know there are other foods out there in the sampling, and you'll find which ones you like. Maybe you'll come back and like your original Mexican food. Great, but you see where that's going? I like that. Nevertheless, is there any hardcore scientific evidence to support religious faith? There now exists a wealth of documented evidence to support for affirmative answer. So we're not just talking about, well, does this make you feel good? Yeah, but can contribute to a happier life. Gallup found that religious people report feeling happy and satisfied with life more often than non-religious people. Strong religious faith appears to help individuals deal more effectively with issues such as aging, coping with personal crises and traumatic events. Families of those with strong religious faith have lower rates of delinquency, alcohol and drug abuse, and ruined marriages. Hundreds of studies suggest a strong link between strong religious faith and lower death rates and improved health. One study of elderly women with strong religious beliefs were able to walk further after hip surgery than those with fewer religious convictions, and were also less depressed following surgery. That's an interesting study. Can you measure how far they walk after hip surgery? And there's a difference. It's significant. Dartmouth study, patients over 55 who underwent open heart surgery for coronary artery or valve disease found those who had taken refuge in their religious beliefs 3 times more likely to survive than those who did not. 3 times. So having a spiritual belief before you go under the knife, you know, if you don't have anything there and you're going under the knife, that's pretty dang terrifying. If you have some faith, you have, the medical didn't say what it is, but if you have something, that's really powerful. Book, Healing Power of Faith, Harold Koenig, he came here to a Rosenfield Symposium. I invited him here about, he's at Duke about 10 years ago. What then is important to defining our values, no matter what their source, and being mindful enough to follow or live them, not having regrets at the end of our life. What have I learned from hospice work? What are the regrets of the dying? I've probably been somewhere involved with over 1,000 patients in hospice over the time they died. Not intimate with each one, but aware of them and what's going on. This isn't just my summary, but this is from some other people who have also found. So what did they say? I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. 2, I wish I didn't work so hard. Now, that's different if you're a farmer or somebody that's working in an occupation, you know, like farmers like to die on the tractor. When you're 85 with a sudden heart attack. So I found. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. I wish that I had let myself be happier. So the idea of this course is not to have yourself have these regrets. What were your 3 wishes? You still have time to realize some of them? Pearl 18, getting close to 20. Exercise. This last pearl brings the 2 lines and spectrums together. Clearly, physical and mental health are intimately connected. They're intertwined like strands of DNA. So don't be thinking they're different lines like I have. The whole field of psychosomatic medicine is just one example. We've seen how poor mental health can drag down the body with elevated stress hormones and dysfunctions in almost all physiologic processes, from eating to sleep and sex. Fortunately, the arrows go in both directions. Now, some of you, I know in here, when I mention exercise, you go nuts. So this is for you. So for you, this is your idea of health. Some of there are, come on, man, this is about exercises. But regular exercise is proven to reduce stress, ward off anxiety and feelings of depression, boost self-esteem, improve sleep. Exercise, a couple studies, as effective as antidepressant drugs in reducing depression with people with mild to up to severe depression. But the more important thing is relapse. After 6 months, only 8% of the exercise group relapsed compared to 30% in the drug group. Almost 4 times more. So if you get depressed, exercise, you're less likely to relapse. From Mayo Clinic, when you have anxiety, depression, exercise seems like the last thing you want to do. But once you really get motivated, exercise can make a difference. So it's just getting yourself going on that. Another study, 1999, 156 men, and they gave some of them Zoloft. Wait, one did an aerobic exercise, that's important. Another took the SSRI Zoloft, and a third did both. 16 weeks, their depression got better, 60 to 70%, which is unusual. That's pretty high, as we've seen. It could be classified as major depression. But it suggests that those who need or wish to avoid drugs, exercise might be an acceptable substitute for antidepressants. So we're not saying go off, but some people would say, well, there's data that shows in some people, but we don't know if that's you or the other people. So again, I'm not saying people should go off. Another one, follow 133 people on relapse. Showed that exercise regularly, regardless of what treatment. So I don't care what treatment that you do. You can do psychotherapy, you can do all the above, you're less likely to relapse. So this is good for some of you other folks. Do your Stephen Covey exercise stuff. And notice you have aerobics for a half an hour. That's all you get.
Great.
Now, how much? Study, 2005, walking fast for 35 minutes a day, 5 times a week, or 60 minutes a day, 3 times a week, has significant influence on mild to moderate depression. Walking fast for only 15 minutes a day, 5 times a week, or doing stretching exercises 3 times a week didn't help as much. So you've got to get some aerobic, you've got to get some chemical change. Just kind of walking around like this is good, but it's not, you need to get a little heart rate going. Remember, everybody has this J-shaped curve. Disease marker and exercise intensity. We all have a sweet spot, no matter what age, that's kind of the best. We're not going to hurt ourselves, and we're going to get the best benefit. Benefits of exercise: decreased heart and blood pressure and strokes, decreased risk of colon and breast cancers. Some of you want values: I hope I don't get cancer. I hope I don't get Alzheimer's. You wrote, I hope I keep my health. I hope I don't get this, that, heart disease. Hope I don't have a stroke, end up in the nursing home. Well, less chance of strokes, less colon cancer, diabetes, osteoporosis, decrease to depression and dementia. Say more about dementia in a second. How many of you exercise regularly? Well, a study in 2010 of healthy people, 46% of people aged 65 to 74 did not engage in any leisure time physical activity in 2008, but last year with these figures. People over 75, the percentage not engaged in any physical activity was only 56%. So again, some of us, unfortunately, as we think, well, exercise isn't important, and I hold that it is. I, as a physician, say more. Another patient asked, how many days a week should I exercise? And the response I learned from another doctor was, you don't have to exercise on the days you don't eat. Alzheimer's. Most of us fear this as one of the worst things that could happen. But what do we find out? 10 million baby boomers, that's me, going to develop this at some time. 1 out of 8. There's new treatments, but I don't think they're going to get here in time for us or our children. Mounting evidence, physical activity, benefits beyond and weight. Point, physical exercise is the most effective therapy today. So the most effective therapy today is this. What about the effects of diet on physical and mental well-being? Just going to zip on this real briefly. Mediterranean diet. We found decrease. Another thing you can decrease: Alzheimer's and strokes. I don't have a stroke. I don't have Alzheimer's. Well, gee, what you eat might have something to do with that. reduction in cancer, both in the occurrence of cancer and reduction of death from cancer. And exercise also in relapse of cancer. Lower risk of stroke. 74,000 women decreased death, stroke, as well as decreased risk of heart attack. Pearl 19, we just have to get to 20. Do the other things that help create happiness. And I don't have time to go into these in detail, but I think you'll agree with me. Is this true or not? Yes. Pets, animals make us happy. Yes. For lots of reasons which we could dwell on. Cuddling literally kills depression, relieves anxiety, and strengthens the immune system. So those of you that have a cuddle person or whatever, there's scientific data to show that's important. Not this kind of cuddling. I don't know how many of you guys are doing that with your significant other or spouses, but it's cuddling. I mean, you know, what the heck? Einstein. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. Well, Albert, these are friends out together for dinner. An intimate date. At the museum. They got a little art behind it. And worse, at a Michigan State basketball game. Nothing can be worse than this. With 2.7 seconds to go, and this idiot's looking at his phone. I mean, to me, that's totally mind-blowing. Music, therapeutic, yo-yo ma. You want to be happy? Follow the music. Music is the language of the soul. Nature. Depression, nature. We have a nature deficit for a lot of people and a lot of kids and a lot of younger generations. You get into nature, out in nature, it changes your, remember I said it's important, your relation to the universe and nature, our place in that. So nature is healing, it's therapeutic. Last pearl. Look to others for inspiration and courage. Oh yeah, and by the way, quit making excuses for why you can't. Earl Clodfelder is a pretty impressive role model for me and you folks. Remember where he went down here on his physical from his DMRA? Earl has come back. He could have stayed down there. He didn't. Others in this room, I read some of your little notes. Some of you have made some tremendous progress. And for places you've been down there and have come up. Remember Bob Molesbury? What another role model and inspiration.
There he is.
It is on his bike. He was down near death, both of those. What brought him up? What brought him up physically? That's why he wrote his book, Blindsided by Grace. His emotional and spiritual values is what made him survive, physically and mentally. So he came not only up here physically, to probably surpass most of us, mentally. So, up here. So we got role models around. I had one of my patients that allowed me to use some of this for her. I thought I'd put it up. I'm feeling very honored and inspired after being asked by this doctor to write my testimonial on my 63-pound weight loss. That's pretty neat. And how I went from never taking exercises seriously. Once in a while, as Susie will say, sometimes some people do what we suggest they do. After also being diagnosed with having bipolar disorder years ago as a young adult. So she's got bipolar, severe bipolar. Years later, she found herself being a full-time caregiver to her husband's parents. She had to give up the freedom of our home, our jobs that we had for over 20 years plus. Truly the hardest thing I've had, besides my daughter's death. So here she has a daughter's death, she has a good job, she leaves her job, she goes to take care of her husband's parents, one who has a brain tumor, and the other one has Alzheimer's. 24/7. Now tell me, in life we talked about stress and what does nature deal with you. So I found myself very depressed and knew I had two choices, to swim or sink. I started out walking, I could then, and then running for the first time at 45 years of age, then running 8 miles every week. I'm happy to share that I haven't been on medication of any kind for the last 4.5 years. Being in a very tough journey, I would have thought I would be on a higher dose of medication, but I'm proof of hard work and my faith, which he has a lot of. No medicine can do what exercises and faith can do for mind and body and soul. She was on a big pile of all these medicines and had that thrown at her. Now, am I suggesting everybody go off the medicine? Absolutely not. But I'm just saying for her, she put something in place of that and also made the choice. So she's been happy 4.5 years. Sometimes these things are very happy. Now, some of us are born or have problems. This guy was healthy until his teenage years. It was Eric Wallenmeyer, and he developed blindness, total blindness as a teenager. That's a pretty tough blow for a kid to get, isn't it? Well, what's he doing there? Looks like he's climbing a mountain. And in fact, he's the first blind person to scale Mount Everest. So, I can't imagine climbing Mount Everest normally, let alone blind. Okay, let's talk about Blindsight. Want to see a great movie? How many people have seen this? Rent it and see it. It's awesome. This is a story of, see, one of the things I have against some of the Buddhism is kids that are born blind in Nepal, in Tibet, they're street urchins, they're scum. They're spit on, they're cursed, they're horrible, they're abominations. Because they did something horrible in their last karma life. That's why they're being punished now. So this German lady who's blind goes to Kathmandu or Nepal and says, I'm going to set up a blind school. So she goes there and sets up a blind school and then invites Eric, who has just climbed Mount Everest, and some of these teenage blind kids set out to climb 23,000-foot mountain on the north side of Mount Everest. I was going to get these kids that don't think they can do anything. Oh, let's go climb to the bottom of Mount Everest. And they've got a role model to do it. And so it's a 3-week journey, but if you see it, I think it's very, very inspiring. It brings all the things we've talked about in this class so far. Here's a picture of the kids climbing up. What about this guy? He looks pretty happy, right? And looks pretty fit. Buffed up a little bit, right? There's tattoos. Let's take a look at the rest of them. Oh, gee, he doesn't have any legs and all part of his arms. That's the way he's born. That's the cards that he got dealt. Well, for most of us, that would be pretty much unhappiness, bummer, to say the least. He becomes a state wrestling, really amazing guy in Ohio. It wins lots of wrestling meets. And he sets out a goal. He's got values, and his goal is, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Not a little go across Grinnell or a little thing. I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So these are made out of tires. He's got on the stubs for his knees and little arm cups that he's made. And he's going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And there he is on the top. Tallest, Africa's highest point. Three guys on a raft, shot down over the Pacific, WW2. They're on a raft, 88 days. With Separini and several others. How are you going to survive that? After 88 days, they're finally found. So they come into land, and what a great story it is to them, but Japanese held island. Now they're in a Japanese concentration camp. Next year's. So the book, Unbroken, as you folks want to be familiar with, this is a story of that. And how his spirit and determination brings him through both of those events. I can't think of much things that are going to be tougher than either one of those trials, physically and mentally. And this is a picture of him on a skateboard at 81. And you read about what happened to him, you just go, this can't happen. Well, there he is. But what's more impressive to me is, than all this surviving is, he goes back to Japan to find the bird who was the German guy who beat him every day, who singled him out to beat him and torture him relentlessly, to offer him forgiveness.
Railway Man is the same thing.
What's the name of it?
Railroad Man.
Railroad Man.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
It's on.
that's even more impressive. Thank you. I want to see that. Okay, this is the second to one of the last slides. A person in here found this as a creed that their mother lived by when, you can start reading it while I'm talking, while they were going through some of her belongings. And this is the creed that she believed and lived by. And I just spent, again, we're just about done, but I just think that's incredibly summarized. I couldn't find anything to summarize this course of emotional and physical health. She's proactive in the sense of Covey, I choose, I choose, I choose. I have free will to choose. I have faith. Her particular faith is a Christian faith, but it isn't just limited to that. She's open to new ideas. She chooses to use her unlimited potential. She uses her freedom to be happy and to share her happiness with others. That's pretty impressive. If someone wants, I'll get a copy of that for next time. So, the goal of this course has been mens sana in corpore sano. I posit that those things that you put on your wish list order, I would posit that if you don't have good mental health, nothing else makes a difference. I don't care if you have $1 million, I don't care if you're an Olympian, if you are down on the end of your mental, emotional thing, nothing else really means quite as much. Secondly, if you lose your physical health, that could be a close second. So hopefully you see that they're both twined together and one pulls the other up. So many of you, most of you in this class now are wandering around up in here, which is really cool. You've been down here, but you've been up here. So you want to move a little farther in either one of these? You can. Doesn't depend on the weather or other things or other people. So, college, remember my English British Lit class, very near the end of Paradise Lost. I remember this from them and had to dig it out. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make it heaven of hell or hell of heaven. And I've remembered that ever since that time. And the good news is, the new Godzilla movie is already out. That should make you very happy. And, better yet, Sharknado sequel will unleash sharks on New York on July 30th. So those are my happiness parting remarks. So thank you for your attention and patience, and may you all be well and happy.
JR. If you have filled out your evaluation forms, you can leave them on the table in the hallway. And hope to see all of you back here again next week, same time, same place. A big thank you for JR for his generosity. Thank you, JR.